The blueprint trembled in her hands as she stared at the impossible structure, a building that defied every law of physics she'd learned in architecture school. But the elderly woman smiling across the desk insisted it had already been built, stood for centuries, and held a secret that would either revolutionize Jenna's career or destroy her credibility forever. Welcome to Stories by J&D Motivation. If you're hooked in and you're ready to enjoy this story, click subscribe and let me know in the comments where you're watching from, because, tomorrow, I will be giving you another story just as interesting as this one. And you don't want to miss it. Now, let's get into it. Jenna Walsh had stopped believing in magic the day her father's architectural firm collapsed under the weight of one catastrophic miscalculation. She was 12 then, watching movers haul away furniture while her father sat motionless in his empty office, staring at blueprints that had promised everything and delivered ruin. From that moment forward, Jenna had lived by a single creed: trust only what you can measure, calculate, and prove. So when Claudia Morrison walked into her Boston office on a rain-soaked Tuesday afternoon with tales of buildings that existed in minds before materials, Jenna's instinct was to politely show her the door. But something about the 78-year-old woman's eyes, sharp, knowing, almost amused, made Jenna hesitate. The architect did something revolutionary, Claudia continued. He listened. He incorporated Pueblo building techniques the Spanish considered primitive. He let the friars believe they were in charge while quietly implementing indigenous wisdom. He made everyone feel heard, valued, essential. And from that collaboration came something neither culture could have built alone. That's a nice story, Jenna said slowly, but how does that help me? Because you think your job is to have the best idea and convince everyone else you're right. But your actual job is to create a space where everyone's expertise can contribute to the best possible outcome even when their expertise contradicts your assumptions. Over the next 3 days, Claudia showed Jenna her old project files. Before every project, Claudia had conducted what she called perception audits, extensive interviews not about what people wanted in a building, but about their fears, past disappointments, and unspoken concerns. "You're teaching me manipulation," Jenna said on their third evening. "I'm teaching you empathy," Claudia corrected gently. "There's a difference. Manipulation serves your ego. Empathy serves the project. When you understand why the contractor is being difficult, you can address the actual problem instead of just pushing harder." Jenna thought about her father again, about how his certainty had alienated the very people who could have made his design work. Pride had been his engineering flaw. Claudia smiled. "I want to show you something. A building that should never exist according to conventional architectural wisdom, yet has stood for over 400 years. And I want to teach you how it was made possible." "Where is this building?" "New Mexico. We leave tomorrow." The flight to Albuquerque gave Jenna time to research Claudia Morrison. What she found both impressed and unsettled her. Claudia had been a legendary architect in the 70s and 80s, known for impossible projects that somehow got built. Then, at the height of her career, she'd simply stopped and retired to New Mexico. The mission church appeared suddenly during their drive through the high desert, rising from the earth like a fever dream. Its adobe walls seemed to grow organically from the landscape, buttresses thick and graceful, bell tower asymmetrical yet perfectly balanced. But it was the structure itself that made Jenna's breath catch. The building appeared to lean at an angle that should have collapsed centuries ago, yet it stood solid and serene. "The San Miguel Mission," Claudia announced. "Built in the early 1600s. According to modern structural analysis, it shouldn't exist. The buttresses are in the wrong places. The walls are too thin in some areas, too thick in others. Every engineering professor would fail the student who designed this." Jenna stepped out of the car, drawn to the structure. She walked its perimeter, mind racing with calculations. "Stop thinking about the math," Claudia called out. "Think about the people." "What people?" "The Spanish friars who needed to impress the Pueblo workers. The Pueblo builders who insisted on incorporating their own structural knowledge. The community that needed a spiritual center. Every person involved had different goals, different expertise, different visions." Jenna turned back to the church, seeing it now not just as a structure but as a frozen moment of negotiation and collaboration. "How do I start?" she asked quietly. Claudia smiled. You already have. You got on a plane with a stranger because you were willing to admit you might not have all the answers. That's the foundation everything else builds on. 6 months later, Jenna stood before the Boston City Council presenting her redesign for the waterfront development project. But this time, she'd spent 8 weeks listening. She'd met with community organizers, invited contractors to review her plans early, and incorporated feedback from environmental groups and neighborhood associations. The design that emerged was different from her original vision. Some elements she'd loved were gone, replaced by compromises that had initially felt like defeats. But as she presented, highlighting not just her ideas but the community wisdom that had shaped them, she watched the council members lean in, nodding. The architect who designed the San Miguel mission understood something we often forget, Jenna concluded. The best buildings aren't monuments to individual genius. They're products of collective wisdom. This project incorporates that principle. It's not just my design. It's ours. The vote was unanimous. As Jenna left City Hall, her phone buzzed with a text from Claudia. Congratulations. You learned the mind trick. Jenna smiled, looking up at the Boston skyline with new eyes. Every building suddenly seemed different, not just steel and glass, but frozen relationships, visible evidence of human beings finding ways to create together. The real architecture, she finally understood, wasn't the structures themselves. It was the trust, respect, and shared purpose that made those structures possible. That was the mind trick, not manipulating people into supporting your vision, but expanding your vision to include them. Her phone rang. A developer who'd rejected her proposals 3 times before. She almost let it go to voicemail. Then she remembered Claudia's words. Jenna answered. This is Jenna Walsh. I'm listening. And for the first time in her career, she truly was. Thank you for watching this story to the end. If you enjoyed this story, you will surely love the next one. It's as crazier and more intriguing as you can ever imagine. So do check it out.